My daughter kicked me out of the house, yelling, "You're going to a nursing home now. You're a burden living off of us." I just smiled and walked away in silence. She had no idea about my $2 million. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. The dinner table had always been sacred to me. Growing up during the Depression, sharing a meal meant everything. It was where families came together, where love was expressed through carefully prepared food, where respect was given and received. But sitting at Zoey's granite countertop that Tuesday evening, I realized how naive I'd been to think traditions could survive in a heart that had grown cold. "Mom, we need to talk." Zoey's voice cut through the silence like a blade. She didn't look at me as she spoke, instead focusing on cutting her chicken into precise, angry pieces. Her husband Derek nodded in agreement, his jaw set in that familiar way that meant a decision had already been made without me. I set down my fork carefully, the way my own mother had taught me. Never make noise, never draw attention to yourself when tension fills the room. "What about, sweetheart?" The word sweetheart seemed to irritate her more. She finally looked up, her blue eyes, the same ones I'd gazed into when she was a colicky baby, when she'd scraped her knee at 7, when she'd cried over her first heartbreak, now filled with something I'd never seen before. Contempt. "This isn't working anymore," she said, gesturing vaguely in my direction as if I were a piece of furniture that no longer fit the room. "Having you here. It's too much." My chest tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd learned long ago that showing vulnerability to Zoey only made things worse. I thought we were managing fine. "I help with the children, I clean, I cook most evenings." "That's exactly the problem." Her voice rose sharply, causing 8-year-old Madison to look up from her tablet with worried eyes. "You're always here, always underfoot, always needing things. I can't have friends over because you're shuffling around in your robe. The kids can't be kids because grandma needs her rest. Derek can't relax in his own home because you're always there, watching, judging." Each word landed like a physical blow. I glanced at Derek, hoping for some contradiction, some defense, but he was nodding along like she was reading a grocery list. "I've never judged anyone in this house," I said quietly. "Oh, please," Zoey scoffed, finally unleashing 3 years of built-up resentment. "The looks you give me when I discipline the kids, the way you sigh when I order takeout instead of cooking, the way you make me feel guilty for having a glass of wine after a long day. You might not say anything, but your disapproval is suffocating." I wanted to tell her that those sighs weren't judgment, they were sadness. Sadness that she screamed at Madison for spilling juice. Sadness that she fed the children fast food 5 nights a week while I offered to cook. Sadness that she needed wine to cope with a life many women would consider blessed. "Maybe we should discuss this privately," I suggested, nodding toward the children. "No," Zoey's voice turned sharp and final. "They need to understand too. Kids, grandma is going to go live somewhere else. Somewhere with people her own age who can take better care of her." 10-year-old Jackson looked confused. "Is grandma sick?" "Not sick," Derek finally spoke up, his tone matter of fact. "But she's getting older and needs more help than we can give her here." The lie settled over the dinner table like a toxic fog. I wasn't sick. I wasn't incapable. At 71, I still had all my faculties, could drive, could cook, could manage my own medications. What I couldn't do, apparently, was exist in my daughter's space without being seen as a burden. "There's a very nice assisted living facility about 20 minutes away," Zoey continued, her voice taking on that false bright tone she used when trying to convince herself she was doing the right thing. "They have activities, people your age to talk to. You'll be much happier there." "And if I don't want to go?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Zoey's face hardened, and I saw the truth she'd been hiding behind all her rationalizations. "You don't have a choice, Mom. You can't afford to live on your own, and we can't do this anymore. You're going to that facility whether you like it or not. You're a weight that lives at our expense, and frankly, we're done." The words hit me like ice water. A weight. Living at their expense. As if the 3 years I'd spent since my minor heart episode caring for their children, managing their household, and asking for nothing but a roof over my head had been nothing but taking. I looked around the table one more time. At Derek, who wouldn't meet my eyes. At Jackson, who was staring at his plate. At Madison, whose lower lip was trembling. At Zoey, whose face showed no remorse, only relief that she'd finally said what she'd been thinking. I stood up slowly, my joints protesting just enough to remind me of my age. But my mind was crystal clear. "All right," I said simply. Zoey blinked, clearly expecting an argument, tears pleading. "All right. Yes. I'll pack tonight." I walked to my room, the guest room that had been my home for 3 years, and closed the door softly behind me. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and smiled. Zoey had no idea what she'd just done. That night, as I folded my few belongings into the same suitcase I'd brought 3 years ago, my mind drifted back to a conversation I'd had with my financial advisor just 6 months earlier. "Mrs. Patterson, you're sitting on nearly $2 million, Harold had said, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed my portfolio. "Between your investment accounts, the life insurance policy from your late husband, and the real estate holdings, you're more than comfortable. Why are you living like you're broke?" I'd smiled at him the same way I'd smiled at Zoey tonight. "Because, Harold, money changes how people see you. And I need to know who my daughter really is." Now I knew. The truth was I'd never been poor. Even after Robert died 12 years ago, his life insurance and our careful investments had left me financially secure. But when I'd had that heart episode 3 years ago, minor, the doctors assured me, just a warning to slow down. Zoey had insisted I move in with them. "You can't live alone anymore, Mom," she'd said, tears in her eyes that I'd thought were from love. "What if something happens? We need to take care of you." I'd been so grateful. After Robert's death, the loneliness had been crushing. The thought of being needed again, of being part of a family again, had made me pack up my comfortable 2-bedroom condo without a second thought. I told Zoey I was selling it to pay for medical expenses, another lie I told to test her character. She'd never once offered to help financially, never asked about my insurance, my savings, my needs. She'd simply assumed I was broke and acted accordingly. The investment consulting business I'd built in the 70s and 80s had been ahead of its time. While other women were fighting for basic workplace equality, I was quietly building a client base of people who trusted my instincts with their money. I'd retired at 60 with enough wealth to last several lifetimes, but I'd lived modestly, invested wisely, and never flaunted what I had. Robert and I had raised Zoey to value hard work and humility, but somewhere along the way, she'd learned to value comfort and convenience instead. She'd married Derek not for love, but for his steady income and willingness to provide the lifestyle she wanted. She'd had children not because she longed to be a mother, but because it was expected. And she'd taken me in not out of love, but out of obligation mixed with the practical benefit of free childcare and housekeeping. I zipped up my suitcase and looked around the room that had never really felt like home. The beige walls, the generic furniture, the single window that looked out onto their perfectly manicured but soulless backyard. I tried to make it welcoming, adding a few photos and the quilt my mother had made. But it had always felt temporary. Because it was. My phone buzzed with a text from my real estate agent, Patricia. We'd been in touch for months about a lovely senior living community about 40 minutes away. Not assisted living, but independent apartments for active seniors. I'd put a deposit down weeks ago, knowing this day would come. "Your apartment is ready whenever you are, Cindy. Welcome to your new beginning." I smiled as I typed back. "I'll be there tomorrow afternoon." At 6 a.m., I quietly wheeled my suitcase to the front door. The house was still sleeping. Derek left for work at 7, and Zoey rarely emerged before 8:30. I could hear the coffee maker gurgling in the kitchen, the same machine I'd used every morning to make breakfast for a family that saw me as a burden. I left my key on the counter next to a simple note. "Thank you for everything. Take care of yourselves." No explanations, no guilt trips, no dramatic gestures. Just the quiet dignity my mother had taught me when she said, "Cindy, never let anyone make you beg for love. The right people will give it freely, and the wrong people don't deserve the chance to withhold it." As I closed the door behind me and walked to my car, the 10-year-old Honda that Zoey constantly criticized as embarrassing, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Freedom. I drove through the early morning streets, past the coffee shops and bakeries that were just opening, past the joggers and dog walkers starting their day. The city was waking up and so was I. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of Maplewood Gardens, a beautiful community of independent living apartments surrounded by mature trees and walking paths. My apartment was on the 2nd floor, with a balcony overlooking a small lake where I could already see residents walking their dogs and feeding ducks. Patricia met me at the leasing office with a warm smile and my keys. "Welcome home, Cindy." Home. The word felt foreign and wonderful at the same time. By noon, I'd unpacked my few belongings and was sitting on my new balcony with a cup of coffee, watching an elderly couple below tend to a small garden plot. They were laughing about something, their voices carrying up on the warm breeze. My phone had been buzzing all morning, but I hadn't looked at it. Whatever crisis Zoey was having about my absence could wait. For the first time in 3 years, I was exactly where I belonged. My first week at Maplewood Gardens passed like a peaceful dream. I woke when I wanted, ate what I pleased, and spoke only to people who genuinely seemed happy to see me. My neighbor Eleanor invited me for tea on Wednesday. Margaret from down the hall asked if I'd like to join her morning walks around the lake. For the first time in years, I felt like a person rather than an inconvenience. Meanwhile, my phone continued its relentless buzzing. I'd finally looked at the messages on day 3, scrolling through an increasingly frantic collection of texts from Zoey. "Mom, where are you? Your note didn't say anything. Mom, this isn't funny. Call me back. I drove by 3 assisted living places and you're not at any of them. Where are you? Derek is furious. The kids keep asking for you. You can't just disappear like this. Fine, be dramatic. But you need to come back. Jackson has been crying every night." That last message made me pause. Jackson, my sweet grandson who always climbed into my lap to read stories. I missed him terribly, but I also knew Zoey well enough to recognize manipulation when I saw it. On day 4, the messages changed tone. "Mom, I'm calling the police if you don't respond. This is insane. Why are you being so selfish? I'm trying to apologize here. We all said things we didn't mean. Just come home and we'll figure it out." Home. Interesting how quickly it had become home again now that I was gone. I continued my silence, partly because I wasn't ready to face the inevitable confrontation, but mostly because I was curious to see how long it would take for the real crisis to emerge. On Saturday morning, 8 days after I'd left, I was reading on my balcony when my phone rang. Not a text this time, but an actual call from Derek. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message while sipping my coffee. "Cindy, it's Derek." His voice was strained, exhausted. "Look, I know things got heated last week, but this has gone far enough. Zoey hasn't slept in 3 days. The kids are asking where you are, and frankly, we need you to come back. Madison got sick at school yesterday, and I had to leave an important meeting to pick her up because Zoey was at work and couldn't get away. We didn't realize how much you were handling." I set down my coffee cup and smiled. There it was. The real issue wasn't that they missed me. It was that they missed my services. My phone rang again immediately. This time it was Zoey, and something in my chest tightened as I watched her name flash on the screen. Despite everything, she was still my daughter. The baby I'd nursed through fevers, the toddler I'd taught to tie her shoes, the teenager I'd waited up for on prom night. I answered. "Mom." Her voice was small, vulnerable in a way I hadn't heard since she was young. "Mom, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean what I said." "Yes, you did," I said gently. "And that's okay. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's still the truth." "No, it's not the truth. You're not a burden. I was stressed and tired and I took it out on you. Please come home. The kids miss you. I miss you. Do you, Zoey? Or do you miss having someone to watch Madison and Jackson after school? Do you miss someone to clean the house and have dinner ready when you get home? Do you miss the convenience of having a live-in babysitter who never asked for a day off?" Silence stretched between us. When she spoke again, her voice was defensive. "It wasn't like that. Wasn't it? Tell me, sweetheart, when's the last time you asked me how I was feeling? Not about my health, not about whether I needed anything, but how I was feeling. When's the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about your children, your schedule, your needs?" More silence. I could hear her breathing, could almost picture her standing in her pristine kitchen, probably staring out at the backyard where Jackson's bike lay overturned on the lawn because no one had taught him to put things away. I don't know," she whispered. "I do. It was 3 years ago, the day I moved in. After that, I became invisible except when you needed something." "Mom, that's not fair." "Fair." I laughed, but there was no bitterness in it. "Honey, I've learned that fairness is a luxury most women my age can't afford. We spend our lives being useful, and when we're no longer useful enough, we become burdens. You're not a burden. Then why did you call me one? She started crying then, soft, desperate sobs that reminded me of when she was 5 and had broken my favorite vase. But this wasn't something that could be fixed with apologies and hugs. Please, she whispered. Please come back. I'll do better. I promise. I looked out at the lake, where Eleanor was feeding the ducks with her granddaughter. 3 generations enjoying each other's company, laughing, talking, existing together because they wanted to, not because they had to. I have a beautiful view here, I told Zoey. There's a lake with ducks, and trees that are just starting to change color. I have neighbors who invite me for coffee not because they need something, but because they enjoy my company. I wake up when I want to eat what I want to, and no one treats me like I'm in the way. Mom. I'm happy, Zoey. For the first time in 3 years, I'm truly happy. But what about us? What about the kids? And there it was, the question that revealed everything. Not what about you, Mom? Not don't you want to be with family? But what about us? Meaning who was going to take care of their needs now? You'll figure it out, I said softly. You're a smart, capable woman. You'll learn to manage your family the way millions of other parents do, without a live-in servant. I hung up before she could respond, then turned off my phone. The next morning, I woke to find Derek's car in the visitor's parking lot. I watched Derek from my balcony as he sat in his car for nearly 20 minutes, probably working up the courage to come inside. He kept checking his phone, running his hands through his hair, and looking up at the building like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Finally, he got out and walked toward the main entrance. I made myself another cup of coffee and waited. The knock came 10 minutes later, soft, hesitant, nothing like the confident man who'd agreed so readily that I was a burden to be discarded. Hello, Derek, I said as I opened the door. He looked awful. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and too much coffee. Cindy, thank God. Can I come in? I stepped aside and gestured toward my small living area. He looked around the apartment with obvious surprise, taking in the comfortable furniture, the artwork on the walls, the view of the lake through the sliding glass doors. This is nice, he said, and I could hear the confusion in his voice. He'd expected some grim institutional setting, not this bright, cheerful space. It is. Would you like some coffee? Please. I poured him a cup and settled into my favorite chair, a recliner I'd bought specifically because no one else's comfort had to be considered. Derek perched on the edge of the couch like he was ready to bolt. The kids are asking for you, he started, which I'd expected. Jackson cried himself to sleep again last night, and Madison asked me if it was her fault that Grandma went away. The mention of my grandchildren sent a sharp pang through my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. And what did you tell her? I told her it was complicated grown-up stuff, but... He rubbed his face with both hands. Cindy, I'm drowning here. I had no idea how much you were doing. Zoe's working overtime to try to make up for the money to cover the extra expenses. What extra expenses? Derek's face flushed. Well, we had to hire someone to pick up the kids after school. And we're getting takeout most nights because neither of us has time to cook. And we had to get a babysitter for date night last weekend, and... He trailed off as he realized what he was admitting. Every extra expense he was listing had been something I'd done for free. The childcare, the cooking, the flexibility that had allowed them to maintain their lifestyle without sacrifice. I see, I said simply. It's not about the money, he said quickly, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. It's about the family. The kids need their grandmother. Zoe needs her mother. Derek, when's the last time Zoe called me just to talk? Not because she needed me to watch the children or help with something, but just to see how I was doing. He opened his mouth, then closed it. We both knew the answer. She's been different since you left, he admitted. Angry all the time, snapping at the kids, crying at random moments. She keeps saying she didn't mean what she said at dinner. That she was just overwhelmed. She meant every word, I said calmly. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we need to hear the truth about how others see us. Derek leaned forward, his voice becoming urgent. But you're family. Family forgives each other. Family works through problems. Is that what you told Zoey when she wanted to send me to assisted living? That family works through problems. His face flushed deeper. That's different. We thought you needed more care than we could provide. I needed care? Derek, I was cooking your meals, cleaning your house, raising your children, and managing my own health just fine. What I needed was respect. What I needed was to be treated like a family member instead of hired help. We never treated you like hired help. I raised an eyebrow. Really? When's the last time any of you asked what I wanted for dinner? When's the last time you invited me to choose the movie for family night? When's the last time my opinion was sought on anything that didn't involve the children's schedules or household management? Derek sat back, deflated. I don't know. I do. Never. In 3 years, not once did anyone in that house treat me like my thoughts, feelings, or preferences mattered. I was useful and that was enough. Cindy, please. Just come back and we'll do better. Zoey promises she'll do better. What exactly does better look like, Derek? More please and thank yous? Remembering to ask how my day was? Setting aside one evening a week to pretend my company matters? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Because from where I'm sitting, better sounds an awful lot like you want me to come back and resume my unpaid position, while everyone makes a bit more effort to hide their resentment. Derek was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. When he looked up, his eyes were desperate. She's falling apart, Cindy. Zoey is completely falling apart. She can't manage everything, and she's taking it out on everyone. The kids are walking on eggshells and I'm starting to wonder if this marriage can survive the stress. There it was. The real crisis. Not that they missed me, but that they couldn't function without me. Their comfortable life had been built on my unpaid labor, and without it, the whole structure was collapsing. Perhaps, I said gently, this is exactly what needs to happen. Derek's head snapped up. What do you mean? Maybe Zoey needs to learn what it actually costs to maintain the life she wants. Maybe she needs to understand that having a family requires sacrifice and effort from everyone, not just the convenient grandmother. Maybe she needs to discover whether she actually wants to be a wife and mother, or if she just wants the appearance of it. You can't be serious. I stood up and walked to the sliding door, looking out at the lake where a family of geese was gliding peacefully across the water. Derek, I spent 40 years of my life being what other people needed me to be. Robert's supportive wife, Zoey's devoted mother, my client's trusted advisor. I was good at it and I found purpose in it. But I never asked myself what I needed. I turned back to face him. I'm 71 years old. If I'm lucky, I have maybe 15 or 20 good years left. I refuse to spend them being tolerated rather than treasured. Derek set down his cup and stood. So that's it? You're just done? After everything we've been through as a family? I'm not done with family, Derek. I'm done with being taken for granted. He walked to the door, then turned back one more time. The kids really do miss you. I miss them too. More than you know. But missing someone and accepting poor treatment aren't the same thing. After he left, I sat on my balcony for a long time, watching the sun set over the lake. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoey. Derek said you won't come back. I don't understand why you're being so stubborn. I typed back. I'm not being stubborn, sweetheart. I'm being wise. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already made arrangements for what would happen next. 3 weeks into October, my peaceful morning routine was shattered by frantic pounding on my door. Through the peephole I could see Zoey, her hair disheveled, her face streaked with tears and makeup. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Mom, I know you're in there. Please, I need to talk to you. I took a deep breath and opened the door. She practically fell into my apartment, her whole body shaking. Zoey, what's wrong? Everything, she sobbed. Everything is falling apart and I don't know what to do anymore. I guided her to the couch and handed her a tissue. Tell me what happened. Jackson broke his arm yesterday. Fell off his bike because no one was watching him properly. Derek was at work, I was at work, and the neighbor who was supposed to be watching him was inside making dinner. The emergency room bill is going to be huge because Derek's insurance doesn't kick in until next month at his new job. My heart clenched. Is Jackson okay? He's fine, but that's not That's not even the worst part. She wiped her nose and looked at me with desperate eyes. I ran into Mrs. Henderson at the hospital. You remember her, right? She used to live next door to you before you moved in with us. I nodded, wondering where this was going. She asked how you were doing. Said she'd been worried since you sold your condo and had to move in with us because of money troubles. Zoe's voice dropped to a whisper. But Mom, she said something that didn't make sense. She said she hoped the investment consulting business you ran was providing enough retirement income to help you through tough times. The room went silent except for the ticking of my small mantel clock. Investment consulting? Zoe's voice was barely audible. Mom, you told me you were a secretary. I sat back in my chair, realizing this moment had been inevitable. I never told you I was a secretary, sweetheart. You assumed it and I never corrected you. But you said you had to sell the condo for medical expenses. You said you couldn't afford to live alone anymore. I said I was selling the condo. I never said I couldn't afford it. Zoe stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. I don't understand. Mrs. Henderson is right. I built a very successful investment consulting firm in the 70s and 80s. I retired comfortably. The condo sold for $450,000, but I didn't need the money for medical bills. Then why? Because I wanted to be with my family. Because after your father died, I was lonely. Because when you invited me to live with you after my heart episode, I thought it meant you wanted me there. Zoe's face was cycling through confusion, realization, and something else I couldn't quite identify. So you're not poor? No, honey. I'm not poor. She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back. How much money do you have? Zoe. No, I need to know. How much? I studied my daughter's face, seeing the exact moment when her concern for my well-being transformed into something else entirely. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. But how much exactly? Tens of thousands? Hundreds of thousands? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. Her voice was rising, taking on an edge that was all too familiar. Do you have any idea what Derek and I have been going through? The stress, the bills, the childcare costs? And you've been sitting here with money the whole time. There it was. Not relief that her mother wasn't destitute. Not happiness that I was financially secure. Just anger that I had resources I wasn't sharing. Zoe, sit down. No, I can't believe this. We've been struggling to pay for everything since you left, and you could have helped us this whole time. Help you with what exactly? The babysitting costs. The extra groceries. The medical bills. Do you know Jackson's emergency room visit is going to cost us $3,000? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Her designer purse on my coffee table. Her expensive highlights that needed touching up. The wedding ring that had cost more than most people's cars. The woman who had called me a burden and weight was now angry that I wasn't subsidizing her lifestyle. Zoe, Derek has a good job. You have a good job. Jackson's medical bills should be manageable for a family with your income. You don't understand. We have a mortgage, car payments, the kids' activities, our retirement savings. All things that most families manage without financial help from their parents. She whirled around to face me. Most families don't have parents who could help but choose not to. The words hung in the air like acid smoke. This was the real Zoe. The one who had been hiding beneath the surface for 3 years. Not the grateful daughter who had graciously taken in her aging mother, but the entitled woman who saw family as a resource to be exploited. Is that what you think this is about? Me choosing not to help? You're absolutely right, I said calmly. Family does help family. Family also treats each other with respect, kindness, and love. Tell me, Zoe, which of those things were you showing me when you called me a burden living at your expense? Her face flushed red. I apologized for that. I said I didn't mean it. But you did mean it. And now that you know I have money, suddenly I'm family again. Suddenly my presence is welcome. Suddenly you need me. That's not what this is about. Isn't it? 3 weeks ago you couldn't wait to get rid of me. Today you're pounding on my door begging me to come back. The only thing that's changed is your knowledge of my financial situation. Zoe sank back onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. But I noticed they were tears of frustration, not remorse. Please, Mom. I'm sorry about what I said before, but we really do need help. The kids miss you, Derek misses you, I miss you. Do you? Or do you miss what I can provide? She looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of when she was 5 years old, testing to see if tears would get her what she wanted. Both, she whispered. Can't it be both? I walked to my small desk and pulled out a folder I prepared weeks ago. I have something for you. Her eyes lit up with hope as I handed her the papers. What is this? Read it. I watched as she scanned the document, her expression shifting from hope to confusion to disbelief. This is a check. For Jackson's medical bills. That's right. But it's not made out to me. It's made out directly to the hospital. Correct. She looked up at me, her voice small. Why? Because I love my grandson, and I don't want him to suffer because of the choices adults have made. But this gift comes with conditions. What conditions? I sat back down, meeting her eyes directly. You're going to hear them tomorrow, along with everything else I have to say. The next morning, I sat across from Zoey and Derek in the community room at Maplewood Gardens. I'd chosen this setting deliberately, neutral ground where I felt strong, and they couldn't storm out dramatically. Jackson was at school, Madison at daycare, so we could speak freely. Zoey looked like she'd spent the night alternating between crying and researching my financial background. Derek just looked exhausted and defeated. I want to start by saying something that might surprise you. I began, my hands folded calmly in my lap. I don't regret leaving your house. Not for a single moment. Zoey's face crumpled. Mom! Let me finish. For 3 years I lived in your home like a ghost. I was useful when you needed me, invisible when you didn't. I tiptoed around your schedule, your moods, your preferences. I never complained when you spoke to me like hired help. Never protested when you made decisions about my life without consulting me. Never asked for a single thing for myself. We gave you a place to live. Derek started. You gave me a guest room in exchange for full-time childcare, housekeeping, and cooking services. That's not generosity, Derek. That's employment without pay or benefits. Zoey wiped her eyes. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. And when you decided my services were no longer worth the minor inconvenience of my presence, you tried to discard me like an old piece of furniture. I said I was sorry. Sorry doesn't undo 3 years of being treated as less than. Sorry doesn't erase the fundamental disrespect you've shown me. I leaned forward slightly. But what really breaks my heart isn't how you treated me when you thought I needed you. It's how you're treating me now that you know I don't. Derek shifted uncomfortably. What do you mean? Yesterday Zoey didn't come here because she missed me or wanted to repair our relationship. She came because she found out I have money and thought I could solve her problems. Even now, sitting here, she's not asking for forgiveness. She's positioning for financial support. That's not true. Zoey protested, but her face was flushed with guilt. Isn't it? You spent 20 minutes yesterday telling me about your financial struggles. You mentioned Jackson's medical bills 3 times. You asked about my net worth. But you know what you didn't do? You didn't ask how I've been feeling. You didn't ask if I'm happy here. You didn't ask what you could do to repair the damage you've caused to our relationship. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice gentle but firm. I'm going to pay Jackson's medical bills because I love him and children shouldn't suffer for their parents' mistakes. But that's the only financial help you'll receive from me. Zoey's mouth opened in protest, but I held up my hand. I'm also going to establish a trust fund for Jackson and Madison's college educations. The money will be managed by a third party and released directly to accredited educational institutions. You'll have no access to it. Mom, that's not fair. Zoey started. What's not fair is expecting your mother to subsidize a lifestyle you can't afford. What's not fair is treating family like an ATM. What's not fair is calling someone a burden and then getting angry when they won't share their resources. Derek cleared his throat. What about family relationships? The kids missing their grandmother. The children are welcome to visit me here anytime, as long as it's because they want to see me, not because you need free babysitting. I'll take them for weekends occasionally, for vacations when they're older. But I will never again live in a situation where my value is measured by my usefulness. So that's it. Zoe's voice was bitter. You're just going to abandon your family? I'm not abandoning family, Zoe. I'm redefining it. Family isn't about obligation or convenience. It's about mutual respect, genuine affection, and wanting the best for each other, even when it's not convenient. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. Zoe took it with trembling hands. What is it? Information about family counseling services. If you genuinely want to rebuild our relationship, not for my money but because you value having me in your life, then we can work on it. But it will require you to examine why you think it's acceptable to treat people the way you treated me. I don't need counseling, she said defensively. Then we don't have anything more to discuss. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Derek, you're a good man who got caught up in a bad situation. I hope you'll consider what kind of marriage you want and what kind of father you want to be. The children deserve better than parents who are constantly stressed and resentful. Cindy, wait. He called as I moved toward the door. I turned back one last time. I'll send Jackson a card for his birthday next week. Maybe a small gift. If he wants to call me, he can. But the days of me begging for scraps of affection from my own family are over. 6 months later, I was sitting on my balcony reading when my phone rang. Jackson's name appeared on the screen. Grandma Cindy? His voice was shy, uncertain. Hello, sweetheart. How's your arm? It's all better now. Mom said I could call you if I wanted to. I'm so glad you did. How's school? We talked for 20 minutes about his friends, his favorite subjects, a book he was reading. Normal grandmother-grandson conversation without agenda or manipulation. Grandma? Mom's been really sad lately. She cries sometimes when she thinks we can't see her. My heart squeezed. I'm sorry to hear that, honey. Dad says she misses you. Do you miss us? Every single day. Could you maybe come visit sometime? Not to babysit or anything. Just to visit. I looked out at the lake, where the autumn leaves were beginning to turn brilliant shades of red and gold. Eleanor was below with her granddaughter again, the two of them laughing as they fed the ducks. I'd like that very much, I said. But only if your mom invites me because she wants to see me, not because she needs something. I'll ask her. 3 weeks later, Zoe called. Her voice was different, smaller, more genuine than I'd heard in years. Mom? Jackson said he talked to you. He did. He's a wonderful boy. He is. A pause. I've been thinking about what you said. About the counseling. And, would you be willing to try it? If I made an appointment. I closed my eyes, feeling something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months. Hope? Yes, sweetheart. I would. Because sometimes love means walking away. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it means finding your way back to each other on solid ground.